So you still maintain that you didn't give the poison to the victim? Obviously, that'd be like putting a belt on your trousers when you're already wearing braces like these. The accused administered the poison, following which this witness stabbed the victim. An unforgivable act, certainly, but not one of murder. That crime rests on the accused's shoulders. That is how the law works, you see. Oh, you see, yokel. Who knows, you may even learn something here today. 2 consecutive attempts on her life in the space of minutes? Quite a day for the victim. Do something that evil and you've got it coming. That's how the law works. The law of reckoning. That's not the kind of law this court upholds. You will reiterate why you were compelled to stab the victim, then. Okay. What exactly were they arguing about? About what happened in the restaurant 9 months ago, that's what. The student girl was laying into the English woman for killing her beloved mentor, Dr. Wilson. Yes, John H. Wilson, a professor of medicine, invited here from England by Professor Mikotoba, no less. Right, but the English woman just jeered. Her case was to be heard by the British consular court in Shanghai. However, there's little doubt that she would simply have been acquitted and sent back to her homeland a free woman. It was eating that student girl up inside. You could see it. I really felt for her. I can't stand here and listen to this tripe. Ray, young girl, you stand accused here. You can't just blurt out whenever you feel like it. No, you can't. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of some very important testimony here. Just keep quiet and listen. But this awful man is making all of this up. Susato, please, you have to make them listen. Return to the dock at once, Membami. We are in the middle of a cross-examination. Your Excellency, please, I implore you. That journalist is clearly not a trustworthy witness. Exactly. He's a filthy, rotten, black-hearted, bigoted, dirty, great peeping Tom. Whoa, take it easy there. Please, I really think the court should hear what the defendant has to say. Your Excellency, I see no need whatsoever to entertain the accused's remarks. I will grant the request of the defense. But Your Excellency, this is likely to be the final cross-examination of these proceedings. As such, I believe it would be ill-advised to stifle the defendant's obvious concerns. So, whilst recognizing that this contravenes regular protocol, I hereby call upon the defendant to speak. Oh, thank you so much, Your Excellency. It was nothing to do. We were discussing the stolen poison, okay? The stolen poison that killed the victim, you mean? I suspected her of being the one to steal it. I mean, just think about how she killed Dr. Wilson. That's true. Additionally, Miss Brett certainly had knowledge of the new poison. But surely it would be no easy task to steal a highly secret toxin being developed by the government. Indeed, all visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched when they leave. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult. That's true. I pestered Professor Mikotoba until he agreed to show me the poison when I visited the laboratory. But as I left, I was searched from top to tail. Miss Brett rather bluntly revealed the existence of the toxin we'd been developing, you see. And since Soseki expressed such an interest in it, I felt unable to refuse. Obviously, I gave nothing away other than the fact that it was an extremely potent substance. I'm very ashamed of myself. It's just that I've had a singularly terrible experience with a deadly poison. I wanted to look my old enemy in the eye. Surely you can understand that. To find out if my suspicions were true, I confronted Miss Brett about the poison. I told her that if there were to be an incident involving it somehow, it wouldn't just be the university. The military would be dragged into it. The whole government, even. It would be a complete disaster. And how did Miss Brett respond to your concerns? She just curled those beautiful lips of hers and said she didn't know the first thing about it. In English, actually. Ah, yes. Many memo. One small question, if you don't mind. I do mind. Can't you see I'm busy? Clearly, you were outside the beach hut listening in whilst the defendant and Miss Brett were conversing. Presumably, then, it was you who wrote this article about what you'd heard? Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. The story was published in this morning's edition of Shoyu News. The details are too accurate for it to have been written by anyone else. Sorry, don't know what you're talking about. Yes, look at this! The entire article is almost what I said to Miss Brett, word for word. Well, many memo. As a journo, and as a citizen of a free country, I don't have to reveal my sources. That's a founding principle of many memoism. Father's clearly right about this. That reporter did write that article, and he based it on what he overheard from outside the hut. So that's what it was all about. You were trying to cover up the fact that you were listening in. That's why you came up with that stinking story about me arguing with her. Shut up. My stories never stink. Look, whatever you say, little girl, doesn't alter the facts. Your Excellency, there's something I want to say, and I want it to go on record. Okay, very well. You may amend your formal testimony. Oh, he's getting mad. He's getting mad. The point is, if you poison someone, there'd be no reason to go and stab the person as well. Perhaps you doubted the efficiency of the poison and sought to make sure your victim would die. That's horse dung. What? That would be like pouring pepper on your Chinese ramen before you even tasted it. Completely reckless. Although, it might surprise you to learn that I am a bit of an impetuous pepper pourer as it happens. Once the victim had taken the poison, she would have been only minutes away from death. And yet, this man then proceeded to stab her in the back as well. There has to be a good reason for it. If it was the reporter who gave the poison to Miss Brett, then clearly he must have done it prior to Ray entering the hut. Yes, that's undeniable. But between him leaving the hut and the victim being stabbed, there was one very crucial change in the situation. Sorry? What change? The reporter overheard the conversation between Ray and the Englishwoman. Oh, yeah, that's it. That's when Many Momo first found out the exact nature of the poison he'd used. Okay, so something about that. If the victim had unwillingly taken the poison already, the reporter would have no reason to stab her. On the face of it, that logic sounds entirely reasonable, but there's no question that this man was responsible for Miss Brett's murder. If we could think of a plausible explanation as to why he might have stabbed her even after the poisoning, I feel sure that everything would drop into place. That's what we should be looking for. In order to do that, I must try to glean more information. Okay, so we have... Okay, so he... Okay, if you poison someone, there'd be no reason to go stab someone, too. Oh, we didn't even examine this. It's not important right now. I'm sure it's going to be like, you know, like the final evidence that we need to test. Because, right, if we have some, then we can test whatever for poison, right? The label appears to be written in a foreign language that I don't know. It's German, so your knowledge of English is going to be of little help here, I'm afraid. Couldn't you just have written medicine on it in Japanese? Then we'd all be able to read it. German is the international language of medicine, my dear. But yes, I can certainly see the merit in labeling the bottle in Japanese. Though I'm not sure medicine would be entirely appropriate. Okay, I think that's... I can't even open it, so I think that's all we're gonna get from this. So, okay, that's not this. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. God fucking damn it. No, I misclicked. Fuck. Okay. Sorry. I got it, what is it called? I forgot what they were called. The demerit, a whatever. A penalty. So the guy got a penalty for misclicking. Oops. Yes, this must be the victim's blood. Oh dear, blood is never a pretty sight, is it? I'm having to fight the urge to run it under a hot tap and get it clean. You've always been fastidious about cleanliness, haven't you? I think this is something else, Father. Okay, I guess there's nothing on this knife. I mean, not that we can we, it'd be funny, we can combine. Oh wait, did it get updated? This poison? Or maybe because he didn't know how long it would take. Maybe he thought that the death would be like instantaneous, you know? Like after he poisoned her, she just keel over and die, but somehow she was still alive. So he's like, oh, so he started panicking, like, oh fuck, like what the fuck? Why isn't she dead? And then stabbed her? No, but he says it proved fatal in minutes. Okay, I'm saving again. It's not been a one misclick. Fuck. I'm sure I'm not the only. I'm sure it's not only me that happens to. Well, I can think of one reason. What? But before I explain, I'd like you to confirm something for the court. Did you glean all the information for this newspaper article from what you overheard outside the hut? Of course you did. There can be no question of that. After all, when we were all in the laboratory together, all we were told is that it was a terrible toxin. And there is one more important fact to consider. According to the witness, Membami's verbal attack against the victim began as soon as she entered the hut. In other words, it would have been impossible for her to have slipped the poison into her drink. Now, where are you going with this, counsel? Manny Memo has made it quite clear that he observed every single thing that happened in the beach hut. If the defendant had somehow found an opportunity, this man would have seen it. Oh, that is true too. I mean, I guess I was focusing on like how much it was like it could have been him, than the fact that it couldn't have been the girl that we're defending. Like maybe I should focus on our client a little bit. Like that's the whole point, right? That we're trying to say that it couldn't have been her. Which means that Miss Brett couldn't have imbibed the poison whilst the defendant was present. In fact, it must have been administered to her before Membami entered the hut. Yes, very articulately put. When I walked into the hut, I immediately started to press Miss Brett about the poison. At which point, Manny Memo overheard some worrying information. Worrying information? What worrying information? The information which he subsequently included in his newspaper article, namely, that the poison was being developed in strict secrecy and that it couldn't be readily obtained. Absolutely. In fact, that's quite an understatement. The only possible place it could come from is my lab. And furthermore, anyone afflicted by the poison would exhibit telltale signs in death. The extreme constriction of the pupils. Yes, it's quite stark when you see it. There are other poisons that show similar symptoms, but not among new substances that are undetectable. In other words, it would be clear that the victim's life had been ended by the use of this particular poison, which would reduce the number of suspects to only a handful of people. Everyone in my laboratory is aware of the unique properties of the toxin we've been developing. None of them would be foolish enough to attempt to use it for some nefarious deed. Membami being no exception. Therefore, we can conclude that whoever administered this unique poison to the victim was a layperson, unaware of its telltale properties. In other words, someone like you, write 10 many memo. It was you who stole the poison from the laboratory that day, and it was you who administered it to the unwitting victim. But you quickly realized that was a terrible mistake, because the poison caused such unusual symptoms that was so traceable. As you listened in from the far side of the beach hut's thin walls, you learnt of these facts, but you'd already given the victim the poison at that point. It was too late, so you hatched a plan to disguise your mistake. And a plan that involved stabbing the victim in the back through the reed screen. But what good could that possibly do? Isn't it obvious, Counsel? The plan was to kill Miss Brett before the poison could take effect. Once in the blood, the poison causes the onset of pupil constriction, but he had hoped to precipitate the victim's death before that happened, didn't he? Exactly. Because without any revealing signs of the new secret poison's use, no one would have ever suspected. This is extraordinary. Yes, the effects of the poison meant it would be too easily identified, so the killer had to mask its use, which he attempted to do by plunging a knife into the middle of the victim's back. Order! The argument presented is sound. The court is satisfied that it warrants consideration. Does the prosecution have a counter-argument? Well, there are a number of... yes, I counter completely. The prosecution's evasive response clearly shows that in much of the same way as he nurtures the remnants of his top knot, he is clinging to lost hope. Look, lost hope? Ah, you pathetic, useless, fallen samurai. Fallen? Who you calling fallen? My whatever. I don't need a counter-argument. Well, what are you talking about? It should be blatantly obvious. I stole the poison, you say? Gave it to the victim, you say? Stabbed her, you say? Lots of fine theories. But I don't need a counter-argument because you don't have an argument yourself. Where's your evidence? Yes, you make it all sound so plausible, don't you? But without evidence it means nothing. Whereas I base my news on facts. Facts? What do you mean? Explain yourself. I mean what the professor said earlier in this trial. It's all here, in my memos. Every word, every slip of the tongue, all noted. That's what the Show You News is famous for. It's the power of the printed word. Indeed, all of them are searched. Okay, even if the thief managed to... I guess that was right? Like, he would have been searched and they would have found nothing, right? But I just said that he could put it in his pen because it doesn't have any ink in it. How's that then? Blown the story wide open? See, I, write 10 many memo, a mere reporter from the Show You News, couldn't possibly have stolen that poison from the professor's laboratory. I mean, it was kind of obvious, wasn't it? And now that I think about it, it's like they were questioning why it was empty. Like, oh, because now I'm sitting here like, oh, well, obviously now I'm sitting here like, oh, he put the poison in the damn pen. He must have stolen the poison that day. He stole it and used it to kill. And if that's the case, as you've identified, the poison itself is the definitive evidence we need. Okay, wait, can I check it now? Like, I'm pretty sure... Like, right? See? It doesn't have any ink. I guess maybe now it's not so important, or then it's not so important. Oh, I think it's there. A very small amount of liquid. Oh, a very small amount of liquid that's not ink. Because whoever stole it from the laboratory that day is the true culprit. What's your point, you annoyingly handsome country bumpkin? My point is this. There is one way that you, Many Memo, could have stolen the poison that day. I have heard enough verbal conjecture now, thank you. What the court must be shown is evidence. What proof? It's his pen! The proof, Your Excellency, is this fountain pen. A fountain pen? How can that possibly be relevant? These magical pens somehow seem to have enough ink to write many thousands of kanji characters. I believe they arrived in our country for the first time some 15 years ago now. Bah, I swear by a weasel hair calligraphy brush. Wait, I swear by a weasel hair calligraphy brush and nothing else. These newfangled pens are merely a fad. Well, as a forward-thinking man of words, obviously I love my fountain pen. Suck up a so I don't know what that was. Soup con of sumptuous ink, and one's work is awash with words in the blink of an eye. That's right. Fountain pens have a small reservoir in the barrel, into which ink is sucked up through the nib of the pen in order to write with later. What does all this talking of sucking up ink have? Oh! And just as it's possible to suck ink up into the reservoir, it's also possible to eject it through the nib again, of course. My word, can this really be? Well, Many Memo? When you saw the deadly poison before your eyes in the laboratory that day, you used your fountain pen, your very lifeblood, to steal some of it, didn't you? By siphoning the poison up through the nib and into the pen's reservoir. More absurdity. That never happened. True, we've heard that there were procedures in place to prevent thefts like this from the laboratory. But would anyone have gone through to look inside a fountain pen, of all places? No, I'm a little ashamed to say that for fear of offending our guests, such a detailed search would not have been conducted. Well, this is quite startling, I must say. I remind the court that this pen was found in the clutches of the victim when she died. In other words, it was dropped at the scene by Many Memo. So the crucial question is, when exactly was the pen dropped? Are you suggesting? The natural conclusion is that in your haste to act whilst the victim was distracted for a moment, you dropped the pen after you emptied the poison from it into her glass. There could be any number of alternative explanations. For example, the witness could have been using his pen to write down details of his conversation with the victim. And when shocked by one of her outrageous answers, the pen fell from his quivering hand. No, that can't be. If it was, how do you explain why the pen was devoid of ink? What? As you can see for yourself if you examine the evidence, there would appear to be no ink present in the reservoir. What newspaper reporter goes to interview someone with nothing in his pen? No, the pen was dropped after the poison that filled its reservoir had been emptied into the victim's glass. Witness, what do you have to say in your defense? So this is how our modern justice system works, is it? So what if the ink in my pen runs dry? So what if my pencil snaps? I can always claw my way back into the game. I have plenty in reserve. You claim I sucked the poison up into my pen? That's wild speculation, nothing more. If you thought you could bring down a fine, upstanding citizen with a trick like that, think again. It looks as though it's going to take one final decisive blow to finish this matter. As I see it, the situation now is very simple. It rests upon whether or not this witness did indeed steal the poison on the day in question. and therefore it all depends upon whether or not the defense can prove that he did with evidence. No such evidence could possibly exist. This is probably now when we're going to use the reagent. Many memo, this is how our modern justice system works. What? In the courtroom, evidence is everything. Something you would do well to remember. Because we are well past the point of speculation at this stage, I assure you. Very well, then I call upon the defense to present the aforementioned evidence. This is it, then. This will be the final piece in the puzzle. The defense can prove by means of this item. Counsel, what is that bottle? This bottle contains the unique chemical reagent that can identify the poison in question. Ah. Yes, that poison is an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids developed by my colleagues and I. It would be impossible to detect traces of it by any other method. Or, from another perspective, simply with this chemical reagent, anybody at all could check for traces of the poison. A reagent? What? One drop of the contents of this bottle on the tip of your fountain pen, memo, is all it will take to solve this case beyond all reasonable doubt. No, you can't. I won't. Your crimes are bad enough, but at least know when to admit defeat. Your Excellency, the defense requests permission to carry out the test on the fountain pen. Damn! This isn't my fault. The Empire drove me to this, trying to hold its head high as a civilized nation. I took up arms in the form of a mighty tenant that fought all in the name of justice and righteousness. Many memo. A Susato. I'd probably be like, hey, yo, the defense cannot just, like, flip this dude. Did I do it right? That was a Susato takedown, wasn't it? Not quite. That was a Ryutaro takedown. The instant the first drop of the reagent touched the nib of the fountain pen, it was clear to everyone present. When I saw it there in the lab, the poison, the devil got hold of me, and I decided to do it on a whim. I excused myself and emptied all the ink down the sink in the bathroom, washing the reservoir out carefully. And then you waited for an opportunity to suck up some of the poison, didn't you? Into your fountain pen. Yes, that's right. Answer me one thing, memo. Why did you steal it? For what purpose? Isn't it obvious? To find out what it was made of and expose it in an article. I mean, it was a secret project after all, too juicy for a journal like me to pass up. Then why did the English woman end up dead? I went into that hut intending to quiz her on the situation, that's all. As a reporter. A known killer, enjoying full freedom, evading justice by leaving the country. I told her what I thought about it. And she just laughed in my face. Oh, what's this? A Far Eastern caveman purporting to practice journalism? Really, you must learn the difference between reporting and listening at doorways, you ignorant plebeian. What? What did you just call me? This country, with its pretensions to a justice system, to a free press, it's really very depressing. You see our superior ways in the West, yet you lack the mental capacity to emulate them. Get out of here, you oaf. Get out and crawl back into the cave you came from. That's when I remembered about the deadly poison I happened to have in my pen at the time. What a terrible tale. In my head, I knew I should just get out of there as quickly as possible, but I couldn't. I couldn't let her get away with what she'd done, when she clearly had no remorse at all. I suppose it was my journo spirit getting all fired up. I'd like to ask you something. Yes? You often talk about justice. But surely, as a journalist, you could have used other means to deliver the justice you sought. There's no justice in the press. Sorry? After that trial 9 months ago, I kept digging and digging to find out what had happened in that courtroom, and finally, I discovered the truth. It was a cover-up, that's what it was. A cover-up? What do you mean? I would remind you of your position, witness. Be careful of what you say. Oh, come on, doesn't it strike you as strange? We're suddenly not allowed to convict a foreign national? Consular jurisdiction which should never have come into it. And yet that puffed-up English woman was going to sail away into the sunset, a free woman. The only possible explanation is that behind the scenes, some deal had gone down between Britain and Japan. What sort of deal? I'd done my research, dug up all the dirt. It was all ready to be published. But you know what happened? The editor just tore the article up. He came under pressure from the government, you mean? If our government is going to let criminals walk free, if they're going to crush the free press, then what choice do I have but to see that justice is done myself? Let's not forget, Many Memo, that you committed murder yourself and you tried to lay the blame at the defendant's door. I'm sorry, but you're no better than Giselle Brett. What? The truth is, you have no right to talk about justice at all. I suppose. It would appear that we have reached a conclusion in this trial at last. Counsel for the defense, Ryutaro Naruhodo. Oh, yes. Sorry, Your Excellency, just musing in a manly way here. It's almost unbelievable this is your first experience of the Supreme Court. It was an excellent performance. In truth, it very much reminded me of your cousin's exploits. Oh, Ryunosuke, you mean? The way he handled the trial 9 months ago and the way you handled this one, it gives me hope that we are genuinely entering a new era of justice in this land. That's very flattering, Your Excellency. Hearing the defense you put forward today made me feel most keenly that the future of our justice system will be forged by you and your contemporaries. Thank you. So, Prosecutor Aochi, do you have any final thoughts? A bro is ready to commit the seppuku? A Prosecutor Aochi? Maybe for his top knot. I, Taketsuchi of the Aochi clan, have been bested by a callow youth, not once now, but twice. If there was any shred of my former self left, it has withered and died here today. Gosh, your journey to cultural enlightenment sure took a while, didn't it? Silence! Rather than living on in shame, I will end it all now with this blade. For that is the true path to Aochiism. Aochiism? One hopes that the only way in which he'll be modeling himself after the witness. Sprig of my top knot, the time is right for farewell. Hope is lost forever. Taketsuchi. She like praying for his top knot. Hold a silent prayer for the top knot. That is so funny. Now, in regard to the defendant, Ray Membami, yes, Your Excellency, I have reached my final verdict. I hereby find you not guilty. Oh, cherry blossoms! Court is adjourned. It's over. My heart's still pounding in my chest, though. It's all I can do to just stay standing. Lawyers have such great responsibility, such a great burden to bear. Don't they? Susato! Susato! Thank you so much. You were so dashing in there. Ray and Father. Honestly, I'm so touched by everything you... Oh no, I think I'm gonna cry. It wasn't easy, but together we made it. I was on the verge of tears at the end too. The only reason I'm still here is because of you. Oh no, I can't take all the credit. It took courage to tell the truth in there. You did wonderfully, Ray. So I would have to say that the congratulations belongs to you. Susato, don't be so standoffish. What? Sorry? We're friends, equals, and the trial is over, so no more of this formal super humility nonsense. It's time to celebrate with swagger, to throw caution to the wind. Caution to the what? I'm the great defense lawyer Ryutaro Naruhodo, and I'm taking you out to a milk bar tomorrow, or something like that. Right, I see. I'll think about it. At any rate, we really knocked the wind out of that horrid man, and it felt so good. Yes, it was satisfying. It really was. Isn't there anyone else who could throw together? I hope you're not looking at me, Ray. Oh my goodness, no, of course not. Of course not. Well, there it is at last, Ray's lovely smile. You fought for your friend to the very last. As your father, I'm extremely proud of you, defense attorney Ryutaro Naruhodo. Thank you, but I couldn't have done it without your help. Anyway, it's time to bid farewell to Ryutaro, I think. I shall miss him in a way, but it's back to Susato Mikotoba now. I mean, if they found out that she was, like, faking, right? If she was, like, pretending to be a man just for this, like, could they not, like, prosecute her? Like, hey, yo, you know? Oh, I pressed the button. What? Well, what is happening? Oh, Soseki and Inspector Hosonaga, I do hope you've been keeping well. Is that really you? Yes, I had to change my appearance for obvious reasons, I hope. But it's me, Susato Mikotoba. I don't... So dashing, so divine. No! Doubly dashing, yes, and devilishly divine. Just look at you. I had no idea, Miss Susato Esquire, that you were Lockham student Naruhodo Esquire's cousin. Astonishingly astounding ace attorney. Poor Soseki, so confused. I still remember the first time I ever met him. He was in a prison cell in London. What an extraordinary conundrum it was that the unwitting student from Japan found himself embroiled in. But after after his skillful defense at the Old Bailey, Soseki was free to return to Japan. And now he seems to have earned himself a great fame as an author. I'm stunned. That's a truly impressive disguise. Even I had no idea, and I'm a chief inspector at the police bureau. Who came up with Mr. Turtle, no less? I'm not sure you should be admitting to that, Inspector. Amazing. You're a woman of many faces, I see. Just two, really, and this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. I hope. Oh, I'm not a patch on you though, Inspector. Well, I am a professional, of course. I do worry about Inspector Hosonaga sometimes, I really do. 9 months ago, when he appeared here at the Supreme Court to testify, he was undercover, disguised as the head waiter of a restaurant. And then on the steamship to Great Britain, of course, disguised as a sailor to keep us safe on the journey. Though that didn't help you, did it? From my perspective, I have to admit that I have mixed feelings about all this. I mean, now the truth has been lost forever. What do you mean? I'm talking about the murder that the English woman committed at the end of last year. Yes, it was an English doctor she killed, as I understand it. Dr. John H. Wilson. Yes, the man I invited to Japan personally. The mystery is, why did she kill him? And now that the culprit herself is dead, we'll probably never know the answer. On the voyage to Great Britain, we had a most unexpected encounter. With Mr. Herlock Sholmes, the great detective, I mean. Yes, I remember Mr. Sholmes well, of course. My arch-nemesis, how lightly you utter his name. Well, according to the stories published about him in the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, the detective once had a partner who helped him solve crimes, a best friend. And that man was an exceptional doctor of medicine by the name of John H. Wilson. What? Dr. Wilson? I just can't believe that it's a coincidence. I think that the English doctor of medicine killed here in Japan 9 months ago must have been the friend and partner of Mr. Sholmes. And if that's really true, then the poor girl won't ever see her beloved father again. As you know, I traveled to Great Britain once myself to study. It was around the time you were born. Yes, grandmother told me about it. On returning to Japan, I took up my professorship at the Imperial Yume University, but I also serve another role, as an advisor to the government on diplomatic affairs. Yes, I was aware of that as well. In that case, I'm sure you understand that there are some confidential matters I cannot divulge to you. Could you just tell me something? Why did you summon me back to Japan? It's been 2 months now since I returned. When I left England, it was because an urgent telegram had arrived from Japan. It said that you collapsed with a high fever and you were growing weaker by the day. What? Where did that news come from? That's what I'd like to know, because after that long sea voyage, I found you in fine health. Was there something in Great Britain that you perceived might inconvenience me in some way, or harm me? That's really the only explanation I can think of. Dear me, do you reserve your most cunning glares for your father, Susato? I'm sorry, my dear, I simply can't— Oh, let me go! Many memo? So, one throw wasn't enough for you. I've got one last thing to say before they take me away, Professor. Me? I know the truth. I know you had a hand in what went on, in that visiting student's fate. Visiting student? Giselle Brett, you mean? No, not her. The student of law who left for Great Britain 8 months ago. What? Student of law? You must mean Kazuma? What are you talking about? What does this have anything to do with— what does any of this have to do with Kazuma? Nobody here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know that the guy never made it to England, that he died on that steamship, and that he'll never— Oh my goodness, Judge? Well, I didn't expect to find him in here. What were you officers playing at? Terribly sorry, Your Excellency. I was coming to tell you that the rickshaw has arrived, Yujin, and it's a good job I came by. Yes, thank you for dealing with him, and I'll be there shortly. Oh, Your Excellency? The trial is over. I'm not Your Excellency anymore. Merely your father's friend, Seishiro Jigoku. And may I say that since I saw you last, you seem to have taken a more dashing appearance, Susato. Did you know all along, from the start? The judge sees everything, Susato. I couldn't let you take the risk. If Seishiro here hadn't known, and then he'd recognized you. So I had a word in his ear beforehand, as an old friend. So Seishiro, shall we? Yes, having ruled on that case, we now have various diplomatic issues to address. Before you go, Father? Sorry, my dear, we shall have to return to our earlier conversation at a later date. But well done again, both of you. You did admirably. Or admirably. Oh, thank you very much. What did you think of my Seishiro sling, eh? It's been a while since I sent a man flying like that. Whatever could Father be hiding from me? About Giselle, about Dr. Wilson, and now it seems, according to the reporter, about Kazuma. I'm going to have to bring this up with Father sometime, when nobody else is around. Judicial Assistant Mikotoba Esquires, could I have a word? Oh, yes, of course, Soseki, what is it? I think perhaps it could be fate that we're meeting again like this now. You see, there's something I need to tell you. Oh, I believe that it may be related to the reason why your father summoned you back from England. This I have to hear. Please, Soseki, tell me at once. I will. As you know, my time in England was terrible. Cursed, I have no doubt. Such awful things I was embroiled in. Thank goodness Lockham student Naruhodo Esquire stepped in. After he secured my freedom, I couldn't wait to get on a ship back here to my homeland. Having arrived in Japan, I submitted a report about my experiences to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The next thing I knew, I had a visitor. It was your father, Professor Mikotoba. He wanted to ask me all sorts of things about my report. My father? He seemed to be especially taken with a particular part of the report. Anyway, he left eventually, having thoroughly quizzed me. But it was the very next day that he sent a telegram to you asking you to return to Japan. What was it then? The particular part my father was interested in? I don't really know exactly. But do you remember them? Those 2 terrible cases I was caught up in? Of course, I could never forget. Your father seemed to concern himself mainly with the second case. The second one? You mean the one Mr. Sholmes forbade of any of us to talk about in public? Which is why the only case involving you that any member of the public is aware of is the first. Well, I don't care. I don't have to listen to what that dastardly detective says. Anyway, the point is, it seems that case somehow holds the key to all these curious unanswered questions. That horrific, hideous, heinous case. The case of the haunted lodgings. Wait, is this after that case somehow caused my father to summon me urgently back to Japan? I thought that whole business was over, but it seems I was wrong. Perhaps that was only the start. Perhaps the story is not yet told. Which one was this? Was this like... does that mean we're going back in time?